Welcome to the Hope for Parents with Struggling Teens podcast. I'm Brandon Jaffe. Join us as we explore relationship and mental health issues by weeding out the trends in the mental health industry to uncover what truly works in improving our emotional well-being and relationships. At Inspired Resolutions Counseling, we specialize in providing interventions and resources for families with teens, focusing on topics such as teen mental health, parenting challenges, and family dynamics.
This episode is a recording of the Hope for Parents with Struggling Teens group. The voices of the participants have been edited out for confidentiality purposes.
Do we have somebody new here today? Do you want to tell us who you are? And what are some of the challenges you have with both? So we know anger management with your child, right? It's funny because parents often use that phrase, and that's how we refer to the group. My child has anger management problems. What, for you, real quick, what does my child has anger management problems mean that you're dealing with? So we've got a child who's defiant and angry. We've got a child who, it's interesting because you described her as finding her own independence. A 9-year-old who is already trying to find independence. And I think as a healthy parent, we have got to remember that from a very young age, our children are trying to find independence. We are trying to pull them in, mentor them, teach them, keep them under an umbrella while they are trying to find independence. And if I ask the average parent, no, I want my child to have independence, as long as it looks like this, and this. That's not independence, people. That isn't true independence. And so I think parents have a hard time admitting, yeah, theoretically, I know that my child's supposed to be finding independence, but I'm terrified for them to actually find independence unless it looks a certain way at a certain time. And I love parents who tell me, but no, I'm really open to what they want. But what you mean is you're open to certain things, like this many things, not the stuff that you know for a fact is wrong and bad and harmful, which is fine. Our mindset is, I know from a young age my child wants independence. My child the other day could not get something open, and she handed it to me because she was frustrated. And then as soon as I started, and she could kind of see that I got it, and I was going to open it all the way, she said, no, I got it. And she ripped it out of my hands. My child, she is respectful. She says, please and thank you, right? But it really kind of jarred me because she pushed and pulled all at the same time. And so that's one of those little moments, right, that we don't really think about, that in that moment, her brain is saying, I can do it. I need to be able to do it. I want to do it, because she's already at 5 years old, while in kindergarten, beginning that journey of I want independence. And we know that. We know that intellectually. Any of us who have taken Psych 101 knows that so surely, but it doesn't translate into our expectations. And what I mean is not expectations of what I expect from you. Right? There's two types of expectations. I have expectations of my child in my home, but then I have expectations for the reality of what's going to go on. It's a mindset. I know that these periods of wanting independence and the desire for instant gratification are going to affect my child. I expect that. Do I want it for her? No, of course not. But I expect that that is going to be a part of our journey together. You're talking about independence, and I want to talk about that a little bit more, and I want to hear from other people, because that causes so much chaos and problems in the parenting journey. You also mentioned the possible eating disorder. Okay, that is really big. I think that eating disorders are not being addressed enough. I can't tell you how often a parent brings their child in who's angry, who's selfish, who's in all respects acting like, for instance, an addict, but they don't drink, they don't smoke. And the anger and the resentment and the chaos going on in the home is being addressed as depression or anxiety or anything but the fact that there's something that looks a lot like addiction going on. Or the other end, anorexia, bulimia. These things are not being addressed. There's a lot of shame with it and denial in it. And so we definitely want to hear a little bit more in terms of that. Now, what we're going to start with, anger. We get more calls about my child's angry One of the most powerful things you can do is eliminate your yelling and meeting the anger that the child has. So many parents justify their huge reaction to their child's huge reaction because they are just responding to their child. So why don't parents usually have the anger management problem in their eyes? You didn't start the argument. If they would have just been reasonable and responded reasonable, you wouldn't have had to yell. I hear this phrase 1,000 times in a year. I wouldn't have to yell if, I wouldn't have had to yell if. Do you know how many times I tried to say it this way? I had to yell because the parent's excuse for poor anger reactions is that they are just responding to their child, but then they don't finish it out. I am responding to my child who's basically got a brain disorder. All of your children have brain disorders. Their frontal lobe's not connected. They do not have control over their emotions and their reactions the same way that you have control. Yet, what's our excuse? My child blank. My child said or did this. I had to get my point across. And that is something I want every parent listening right now to think about. Most of your reactions that you regret came from a place of feeling like you had to do or say something or get something across in the moment. Who can identify with that? Your child is on a cheer team, and because of the pressures of cheer, she's choosing not to eat and drink in a healthy way. She's too tired. Her tiredness leads to arguments in the home and anger and her being unreasonable. She was going to already be unreasonable because she's young, and now she's even more unreasonable because she's making decisions about her body and her health that are unhealthy. And what is the trigger? The trigger is participating in cheer. And your reaction is try to reason with her. Then your second reaction is to explain to her that you're not going to engage. I want to tell you guys that one of the ways that you engage is giving your kids a play-by-play about the boundaries that you're going to set. I am not going to talk to you about this because you are acting insane. That's engaging. Until you calm down, I am not going to speak to you anymore. That's engaging. Disengaging is not the same as ignoring. Disengaging is sometimes you just got to walk away because there's no way to interact. But the first attempt is one of those comments that get you out of the conversation. Things like, okay, I need to sit with that for a moment. Your daughter refuses to eat. Man, you know what? I'm having a lot of feelings about you not eating. I need to come back to this. That's disengaging. Not putting it on you. I'm not saying I agree with you, not disagreeing with you. I'm exiting. It's exiting with decorum. I believe that one of the greatest skills that a parent can learn and practice on a daily basis is disengaging statements. You should have 1,000 of them in your pocket. It is one of the single greatest skills that you can have as a parent and actually as a human being. I want everybody to come up with a time that you, or a trigger where you know you should disengage, but you can't. And you get sucked in. A topic or a trigger phrase or a look. Anybody have one? That one's so common. Why do parents have such a hard time disengaging from the right? And I'm not saying don't try to get your child up. I'm not saying don't set boundaries regarding that. But I have had parents who every day, 5 days a week, they get up, they go to their child's room, the arguing starts, the child sleeps through half of the arguing. So the parent's miserable. The child's just trying to go back to sleep. And then the parent uses a lot of words, a lot of anger, just keeps talking, then starts yelling, tries things like alarms, tries to go get the other parent to get in on it. And it becomes this huge amount of energy and effort and time. I've known parents who are late almost every day to work because of their argument in the morning. And I get it, right? Because you're going, yeah, but I have to, Brandon. I have to get my child to school. Okay, right? Your child's making some choices. Any either advice or questions, or can anybody relate? And this is a battle we hear. My child won't get up. I argue with my child all morning. And for me, I don't know about you, but for me, my mornings are sacred. It's my favorite time of day. I get up really early. I generally work out, surf. I like to make some coffee. I go through different phases of sometimes I'm making a latte, sometimes I'm like true brewing on the stove. Right now I've got a little Nescafe, but I love my coffee. I love my time in the morning. I love my workouts or surfing. I love my morning time. I don't want anybody to mess with my morning time. My morning time sets me up for the whole day. I hear this problem all the time. Mornings are the worst for my family. The little kids are involved. The kid who's supposed to get up is involved. Everybody's yelling. It's frustrating. We can't do this. There's been getting clothes. It's dishes. It's breakfast. It's getting dressed. And so I've been doing this for a lot of years. And it's very new to parents when I ask them this one question about their rigmarole in the morning. Is it working? I ask every parent who brings to me this one question first. Is arguing about this in the morning working? They all say yes. Most parents tell me, yeah, it is working. Then I have to say, well, what do you mean? How is it working? Well, they got to school. You just told me they were late. Well, yeah, they're late, and I'm late. How do you feel about your child? I can't stand him or her. Okay, how's your marriage? How's it helping your marriage? It's not helping my marriage. How are their grades again? Their grades are terrible because when they get to school, they're not even going to class on time. Once I walk them through, okay, it's only working if you're actually getting what you want from them, you're not resentful over it, and it is helping your relationships in the home. Then people go, okay, no, it's not working. Never mind, it's totally not working. And then I ask them, what would happen if you stopped fighting with them in the morning? If you set a boundary, your choice to not get up is not my problem. And you only gave what is healthy to give. And so, for example, it's pretty healthy for a parent to go, hey, it's time to get up. Come on, once. And then move on. And then have a time. Hey, I'm leaving at 7:30. If you want breakfast, you got to be at the table at 6. Now, when I say the food thing, parents go, but I got to make sure they eat. I'm thinking, good Lord, you do? There's a million ways to get them food out the door, a million ways for them to get food. But here's the thing. We don't realize when we're enabling. If I fight with you all morning to get you down to breakfast, and then I fight with you to eat breakfast, then I fight with you to clean up, but end up cleaning up after you, then I go get your backpack, then I eventually go get your clothes because you can't find them, and then we get out the door late, and I'm frustrated. I just did something called enabling. I am stuck in a codependent relationship, and my justification for it is, yeah, but it's for the sake of school. Every parent says yes when I say, is it good to let our child fail? But every parent struggles to allow our children to fail where it's going to really hurt them. And then some parents go, yeah, but I care more about school than they do. Well, then they've got a long road to figure out, don't they? But here's the thing about enabling and codependency. No matter how righteous it looks, no matter how good it looks, no matter the justification, it is never, ever, 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 ever healthy. And we justify it all kinds of places. But I can say with full confidence, there is no situation where enabling and codependency is better than not enabling and not having a codependent relationship. Now, if I can accept that, I can make decisions based off of that knowledge rather than decisions based off of my fears and my emotions regarding my child. And so for all these years, we're talking between this group, the people who have worked for me, my clients over the years, we're probably talking like a couple thousand people. I know that seems like a lot, but it's true. I have yet to have a single family say, you know, the worst thing I ever did was stop the chaos and stop arguing in the morning. I've never had a parent say, that decision led to my child's drug abuse and failing out of school and complete and utter breaking down in life. I've heard hundreds and hundreds of times parents send me messages, tell me in this group, tell me in session, you know, it's kind of wild. I stopped. They're not perfect, but they get to school more often on time now. I can't tell you how many times I've had parents go, I can't believe this happened, and I want to knock on wood, but Brandon, I didn't say anything, and they got it. They were like at the car. And then just as many people say, hey, Brandon, we stopped, and they're still having trouble getting to school, but it's kind of weird. We're talking in the morning. I found so much stuff out first thing in the morning, I was baffled. I've had a few times where because the argument stopped, the child decided mom and dad were safe to tell a real problem to. I've uncovered so many times that there was a serious problem with a child actually going to school. They weren't wanting to go to school. They were fighting getting up and fighting going to school because there was a problem that they hadn't disclosed yet. I recently had a couple tell me, Brandon, you saved our marriage. I'm like, I did? Because they weren't a client. How did I save your marriage? We were going to get a divorce. We took your advice and we stopped fighting with our son in the morning. That led to us connecting in the morning and having breakfast together. That led to this idea that we were going to start praying in the morning. And that led to us choosing not to get divorced. That's how powerful the choice to stop a codependent dynamic can be. Any thoughts, you guys? You remind me of the 90-10 rule. And remember, the 90-10 rule is, hey, spend only 10% of your interaction with your child on the hard stuff. The parenting, hey, what are your grades? Hey, we need to set this boundary. Hey, we got to follow through, right? The hard stuff. Have 90% being in relationship with your child on the surface in a positive way. Now, here's the thing. When you only spend 10% of the time, you actually have more influence over your child. And when you spend 90% of the time focused on the easy, nice stuff, they do things like tell you stuff that you didn't think they were going to tell you. They have notions like, man, mom hasn't ticked me off for 90 minutes. I'm going to get up. What it reminds me of is, if I am practicing the 90-10 rule, I am probably not going to be stuck in a codependent relationship. If I'm practicing the 90-10 rule, guess what? I'm not going to spend 3 hours on homework that still didn't get done. And if I have to spend 3 hours on my child's homework by the time they're a teen, there is something going on. Different resources need to be given, different expectations need to be had, and boundary setting needs to happen. You can't redo school and be a healthy person, by the way. It's heartbreaking. I was talking to a mom and dad the other day, and they were telling me mom was obsessed, did everything for a very, very long amount of time. Just poured every ounce of identity, time, energy into the kids. The kids are more connected to dad now. Mom barely has a relationship. She's kind of rejected and is seen as this just annoying presence that nobody wants to be around. Her kids literally don't invite her to stuff. Doesn't have an identity. The marriage is on the rocks. You know what the dad said? The kids are successful in spite of my wife's behavior all these years. Can you imagine putting that much time, effort, and energy into your children only to be seen as somebody that people thrived in spite of? Heartbreaking. All good intentions. You see, the problem was as much time, effort, and energy. She was responsible for a bunch of A's. As I peel back the layers, she was responsible for a whole bunch of A's in high school. She was responsible for different things, right? But she was responsible. That codependent relationship was never loved, never accepted, never appreciated. It was taken advantage of and then rejected later in life. Heartbreaking. If there's a one-off every once in a while, you're spending 3 hours with your child doing homework, and go for it. There are some times that's needed. But if that becomes a regular occurrence, something's up. Something unhealthy is happening. Other resources and expectations need to be discussed. Anybody else? Somebody else? Thoughts on this? The question is, well, if I'm a family member or another older child who's seeing a loved one or seeing a parent be stuck in a codependent relationship, what do I do? Number one, you don't become obsessed. You set healthy boundaries with your family member. You can acknowledge it, you can reflect it, and you can tell somebody what you're seeing. But the moment you realize that you're repeating yourself over and over again, guess what? It's time to stop. You don't have control over that unhealthy dynamic. One of the most difficult things to do in a family, and I've experienced it in my life, you've experienced it in your life, is to watch an unhealthy dynamic go on close to you and you can't do anything about it, but you feel like you should be able to. Mom, Dad, don't you see what you're doing? Well, here's a problem with that. It can be, yes, I do, but leave me alone is my choice. Or it can be, no, I don't, and now I resent you. Or it can be, yes, I do, you're right, and then I don't change anything. Sometimes we can point something out to somebody and they say, hey, thank you, and they get motivated to make the change. But there's something true with addiction, something true with anger management, something true with depression, with anxiety, with unhealthy relationship practices. There are two things that must happen. Number one, you must identify and accept that there is a problem. And number two, you must be willing to do the work to change it. I used to say it's ask for help. I think you have to be in a posture, in a spirit of, I'm willing to do the work even though I don't know what the work's going to be. And until you make that decision day in and day out, you're not going to make changes. And here's the problem. You cannot make your loved one do that kind of work and make that decision. Isn't it funny? We can sometimes get like that trifecta. You've got the problem person who's the dependent, and then you've got the codependent, and then you've got the loved one of the codependent who's the codependent with the codependent. Oh man, when I unravel that and peel back those layers in my office, the epiphanies and the aha moments that people have are wild. I don't think in psychology we have a name for that, but we should. We should have a name specifically for the relationship of being codependent on the codependent person. And it's usually the parent's the codependent for one child, and then the child is the codependent for the parent who's codependent. I love you, and these are under the conditions with which I am willing to be in relationship with you, mom or dad. And that's hard when you're young. As you get older, though, you have more independence and you can make different decisions. Any other thoughts on this? Raise your hand if you know somebody who struggles with an eating disorder. I think it is the most underrated, underestimated, and undertreated thing going on. And the reason is we have the deadly eating disorders, bulimia and anorexia, when you cannot gain weight. Now, bulimia, there's a lot of different variations that we talk about in books and everything, but basically there's bulimia of people who are also anorexic and underweight, and then there's bulimia of people who are overweight, and it's a part of their food addiction. We don't want to call food addiction, but the fact is there is food addiction, and we don't like to address it, especially in our children. We're on this pendulum. The pendulum's over here where we are more worried about making sure that people feel good about their bodies than we are addressing the fact that there's this horrible addiction thing going on. We're more willing to address the fact that somebody is ill if they are too skinny, which is the situation that you're talking about, and we're going to talk about that, than if they are massively overweight and angry and ruining relationships and ruining family dynamics, sabotaging their life, not just sabotaging their health, but acting like a true addict has a very specific set of behaviors that they play out all the time. Now let's talk about what you brought up, which is your daughter is young and already not eating, possibly developing anorexia. At this stage of the conflict, it's a matter of setting boundaries. I talk about all boundaries are about protecting yourself. One thing you can protect is what you participate in. I will not participate in anything that might kill my child. My child cannot go to cheer practice if I don't drive her. My child doesn't have the money to sign up for cheer practice if I don't pay for it. If my child refuses to eat because of the influence of a sport, I don't care who's on my case. I don't care how talented my child is. I am not participating in that. Not with my money, not with my time, not with my car, not with my permission. I'm not telling you to have the boundaries I have. I'm giving you an example of what a boundary setting is. Sometimes boundary setting isn't a huge decision or taking something away. What it is I'm not going to participate. I'm not going to pay for the thing that's making you sick. Will that fix it? Probably not. Will your child get angry at you? Absolutely. Will the coach get angry at you? Absolutely. Will some of the parents get angry at you and judge you? 100%. And that's what's hard is when we set boundaries, we're often in the mindset of, I want to set the boundary that's going to fix the problem instead of I'm going to protect myself because I might not be able to fix this problem. I'm not saying there's not other things to do. I'm not saying to address the problem directly. Now, I'm not going to participate in this cheerleading thing, but I am going to get my child some resources like therapy or a doctor or something else, right? So there's a whole bunch of other parenting. Sometimes I think I forget to tell you guys, hey, it doesn't stop at the boundary setting. The boundary setting is like the foundational piece. What's that like to hear? She hadn't set a boundary yet in this day because she was angry. I love that. When you're angry and you're in the middle of a crisis, is not when you set the boundary. This behavior has been going on for a while. You don't need to set the boundary today. You can set the boundary tomorrow, the next day, the next day, the next day. I love that piece of her story. When you're dealing with the not eating type eating disorders, when you're dealing with the anorexia, first and foremost, you need to go to a medical doctor. A lot of people seek out a therapist first. That is not where you go first. A lot of people want to go to a dietitian first. I get it. And a lot of people would say, a lot of therapists would refer that first. Our protocol, though, says go to the doctor first. There's a reason for that. A dietitian is not a medical professional. Anorexia is a very medical condition, is a physically medical condition. You want a doctor to assess if hospitalization is needed or if there's some sort of potassium problem, right? I had a client who was acting funny in my session and didn't want to go to the doctor. She had been in and out of treatment, and I refused to see her because something felt off. And I said, I will not see your daughter until you guys go to the doctor and get a note from me. Oh, she was hospitalized. She was very close to death. And I can't remember if it was sodium or potassium or both. But that's why I shouldn't assess it. I don't even know what it was. But something was so off in this girl that had she not gone into the doctor when I refused to see her, she would have died. And so as much as it involves mental stuff, relationship stuff, when it is the not getting enough nutrition problem, the first person you go to is the doctor. They will refer you to the dietitian. Then we're third. We might not even come till way down the line. Most of the time, so when those of us who are in private practice like us at this center, we don't get people who are anorexic in the middle of the fight. We get them towards the end when they're cleaning it up, when they've already gone to the hospital, when they've gained the weight, when they need to repair the relationships in the family, when they need to stick to a maintenance plan. But they don't belong in our center when they're in the beginning and middle of the battle. And for many people, like addiction, you'll notice I refer so much to addiction. I believe the addiction model for treatment, it addresses so many mental health issues. Somebody with anorexia and bulimia, lifelong battle. Addiction, lifelong battle. The treatment, the maintenance, looks a lot like addiction treatment and maintenance. And that's important to understand if your child is struggling with this. So you're doing the right thing. I'm glad you're making a doctor's appointment. Now, with nutritionists, make sure you are with a nutritionist who understands the disorder. And I've dealt with a lot of different nutritionists. There's a big difference between a nutritionist who went to nutrition school and likes to do tough mudders and Spartan races and deals with people going to the gym and getting fit, or people who need to lose weight or want to lose weight, or people who want, right? There's a big difference between that dietitian and a dietitian who is dedicated to treating eating disorders, especially anorexia. And that dietitian should be used to and ready to communicate with a therapist, to communicate with a doctor. I won't see an anorexic client if I don't have an authorized release for the doctor and the dietitian. I had a conference call with a dietitian once for one of the most severe anorexic clients that I ever had. And this person, right off the bat, started talking about weighing, started talking about different wild diets like keto, and started talking about what they should eat and could eat. And I said, do you know what our client's willing to eat? And the dietitian said, yeah, they mentioned that they'll only eat 3 grapes and this and that. I said, you just gave her a meal plan that looks like it's for somebody who is trying to do one of those stage bodybuilding bikini showing contests. We're trying to get her fed. She'll eat grapes. Why aren't we trying to figure out that, hey, there's a certain texture and thing that she's willing to put into her body and trying to make that. And she said, well, why would we do that? She needs to be eating this. And so I was thinking, what is going on here? I'd never had this type of conversation with a nutritionist. And so the nutritionist just kept going on and on about what this child should be eating. And finally I said, okay, here's the problem. We need her to eat. We need you to track the weight, the measurements. That's your job too. But you just told her to weigh herself at home, and you're giving her a meal plan that looks amazing. I mean, all the macros, and she's talking about macros. I said, she just got out of the hospital. And then it dawned on me, I said, have you ever dealt with anorexia? This is exactly what she said. I was anorexic when I was young, and now I've won this competition, and this competition I do this, and I'm going, oh boy, okay, this isn't good. And I said, have you dealt with another client that is anorexic? And she said, no. Anorexia is a very tricky battle to walk alongside somebody with. Parents should be very educated. They should know what their boundaries are, how involved they should be willing to get. You should have a relationship with a doctor. You should know that you have the right nutritionist. And you should know some of the signs that you got the wrong people as a part of the treatment program. And some of those boundaries include, I know when it's time to call the ambulance to get my child forced to go to the hospital. This is how codependent I'm willing to be. This is where I stop. So I wanted to get that message out there anytime this comes up. Well, I appreciate you sharing with us, and I hope that you keep coming back. I think we can help you on both sides of the journey, the anger, the eating disorder stuff, the independence. Remember, what's the mindset, guys? What are we trying to remind ourselves of? Your child is seeking independence no matter how unhealthy they are. They're trying to seek independence. At the same time, they want what they want when they want it. That's why you feel like you're used all the time. What the heck? They reject me here, but then they want me for this? Well, yeah, because they've got two really egocentric things going on from a very young age. I want what I want when I want it. Well, 3. I can only see the things in life that pertain to me, and I want to be independent, and I should be independent. Why did God put those 3 drives for such a significant period of our lives into our brains? What a cluster, you know what? And then we wonder why our children seem insane. Who else is willing to check in tonight? I really appreciate you sharing with us tonight. And I want you guys to understand that first, there is this mindset that when your child is that bad off, you force them, you get in their face, you get tough. And then there's another mindset on the other end. You're permissive, you don't do anything. You can't do anything because you don't want to trigger them. I preach healthy habits, period. What are my boundaries? What am I going to insist on? What do I have control over? So in this stage, my advice is you and your husband have got to write down the things regarding your child that you have control over. Okay, now if your child's not eating, if your child is practicing self-harm to a certain extent, hospitalization might be in order. If your child is refusing treatment and it doesn't get to a certain point and you can't get them hospitalized, that acceptance of I don't control that can feel horrible. And I have so many people arguing with me, but it's a silly argument to me. It's like, okay, but you don't control it. Yeah, but I need to. But you don't. But my child might die. Right, no, I understand your grief and your pain, but you don't have control of it. I don't have any magic for you. But I've got to do something. Okay, what have you tried? Well, I've tried talking to them. I've tried getting them a therapist. I've tried forcing them into a hospital, and that made it worse. I tried yelling at them. I tried punishing them. I tried taking their phone away. I tried grounding them. I tried shoving food down their gullet. I tried taking everything out of the home so they couldn't cut themselves. Okay, so you've tried a lot. Did any of it work? No. But I hired you to tell me what to do. One of the most heartbreaking things I can tell a parent is I know things are horrible right now for you. I don't have a magical answer. Are you practicing self-care? No, my child's hurting too much. Oh. Have you been pouring into your relationship and your marriage? Well, no, we're dealing with my daughter or my son. Oh. Do you exercised and focused on your nutrition lately? I don't have time. I got to work and then I got to deal with my daughter or son. Oh. You've been pouring into other healthy and important relationships in your life, like your other children, like your friends? No, I'll do that when I figure this out. What if this can't be figured out? then I guess I'll never be able to focus on those things. And that's where I point out to them. So if your child continues to refuse to take care of themselves, you are going to model for them that you refuse to take care of yourself. Sometimes the only thing you control is healthy living. Sometimes the only thing you control is modeling for your child getting help and accepting help. Now, if your child's cutting, I'm not saying don't get rid of the razors in their room, et cetera, et cetera. They're crying every night. I'm not saying that you're not going to hurt and feel pain in your chest and maybe even cry yourself. No, I'm not saying you're going to become some cold robot. But at the end of the day, isn't it wild that when your children seemingly have no hope, you join them instead of standing your ground in health and waiting and being patient for them to join you as you offer resources unconditionally, but don't keep trying to control the things that you don't control. Here's a really heartbreaking message to a lot of parents out there. Some of your children, no matter how good a parent you are, no matter how many good decisions, some of your children are going to make horrific decisions, and some of those decisions might kill them. Is that the norm? Nope. Does that happen very often? Nope. Is it likely? Nope. But it happens. And I just addressed the ultimate fear. Most of you just had a sinking feeling when I said that. There's nothing huge for you to do right now. Your daughter is choosing to cut, choosing to respond in a very unhealthy way. I happen to know that you're providing resources for her to get better. I happen to know that you're willing to come to this group. You're willing to make changes in your marriage, in yourself, and you pour into that. You pour into becoming as strong and as healthy as you can as you walk alongside your daughter during this horrible season. You get the help you need for your own grief because she's refusing to get help. And she's independent at this point enough that she can refuse the help. You know, a teen can't necessarily drive where they want to drive unless they're willing to steal a car. But you can't force them to take medicine. You can't force them to utilize skills that they learn in therapy. You can't force them to behave healthfully when their heart gets broken. You can't usually stop them from taking drugs or cutting themselves. All you can do is maximize your influence over them and control the things that you actually control. You can keep drugs out of your home. You can do your best to minimize the amount of things that they can cut with, but somebody who truly cut, right, those, like a true cutter, you don't stop it. You're not going to stop it. And cutting doesn't reach the necessity of committing them to a hospital. Whether that's right or wrong, I'm not going to argue. But the fact is you don't have control. You can beg, you can plead, you can pray over them. You can, again, focus on balancing yourself out during this really horrible, hard time. Getting support. Isn't it funny? We'll spend all our energy trying to get our child resources, forgetting that we're in a lot of pain too. I want you guys to remember to have a loving spirit, love on them. Sometimes loving on them is just I love you. Sometimes it's just a look. Sometimes it's being consistent in offering the meal with a kind heart rather than an insistent heart. That reminds me of another story of a client. I had a mom who didn't know what to do. She was begging me to give her something to do because her child was so depressed. And interestingly enough, it involved a breakup. The trigger for many teens is a breakup. Their major depression, major cutting, their world falling apart is usually a breakup. And that's because feeling lonely hurts everybody, but feeling lonely as a teen, it can often be one of the most miserable things that you could ever experience. What happened was I was young in my career, so I didn't have the boundaries that I have now. And so this mom kept saying, you have to give me something. You have to give me something. We've been to other therapists. We heard about you. Give me something. My child is just crying. She won't come out of her room. She stinks. She's not eating. And I said, well, does she need to go to the hospital? Like, do you need to call 911? No, I don't need to call 911. So, okay, I don't know what to do. And she said, I need something. I need to do something. And at some point she said, well, every time I try to help my daughter, she says, no, I hate you. You never listen to me. And so I got this bright idea. I said, well, why don't you spend 30 minutes before you go to bed every night and say, I love you and I'm sitting outside your door if you want me to listen to you. And I told the mom, don't give more than 30 minutes. And so I said, just sit outside. She said, you don't listen. So and I was stuck. I was kind of in the beginning phases of talking about loving on our child instead of just loving our child. I said, to love on her, say, I love you. I'm going to sit here for 30 minutes just in case you need to talk to me. And she did that. I don't even know for how long. She did it for a very, very, very long time, many, many nights in a row. And to her astonishment, one night she sat down and said, I love you. I'm sitting at your door because this kid wouldn't even let mom and dad in the room. I love you. I'm sitting at the door just in case you want me to listen to you. And the daughter started talking. And the mom started crying so hard she had to cover her face with a pillow so that the daughter couldn't hear her. But she kept that practice up for the remainder of the time that I saw them. And so sometimes loving on our children is not accepted by them, is my point. Sometimes we've got to get creative with, I want to do something. What do I have the power to do? Rather than I want to do something and I need it to be accepted by my child. Sometimes we got to do little acts of loving on them consistently, even when rejected. I don't know what you should do. Don't shoot for a home run. Spend a lot of your efforts figuring out with your husband how you can practice self-care so that you can be healthy as you walk alongside your hurting daughter. Continue to give the resources that you're willing to give. Look for interesting and creative ways to love on her, whether she rejects it or not. Think about what you want to do consistently that you can do without ruining your life. Be consistent, be patient, be graceful, be consistent, be patient, be graceful. Protect yourself, focus on the other relationships in your life. Your children mean a lot, but they cannot be the entire realm of your identity. You are going to hurt when they hurt, but you cannot fail just because they are failing in their life right now. You are going to be sad when they are hopeless, but you cannot wipe off the other parts of your identity. You cannot just completely ruin the other relationships in your life. You can't go down with the ship, right? I know that's like a captain thing. You go down with a ship. Parents can't go down with a ship. You need to get yourself straight so that you can reach down and pull them up when they're ready. I was a lifeguard, and I've always been pretty big. I was a really good water polo player, so I went in like, I got this. And when they were training me, I'm like, I can save pretty much anybody. Everybody's pretty much going to be smaller than me. And so they're training me, and you pretty much don't touch a drowning person. Like, you don't get near a drowning person when you're actually saving them until they're safe enough, and you get this bar thing, and then you can pull them in, right? And I remember thinking how crazy it was until I tried to save somebody once, and it was a kid, and the amount of force that a drowning person has, a drowning child can drown a large man who's trying to save him or her. A child who's drowning in life can take an entire household down. If allowed, they can ruin jobs, they can ruin homes, they can be the cause of entire empires falling in a family. You have to adopt the same thing that lifeguards adopt. I will offer saving you, but I will offer saving you in a way that will not take me down. I will not drown with you. Do not go down with your children. It's one of the most loving things you can do. I'm all for sacrificing for our children to help them out, but you can't go down with them. You can only sacrifice what you can afford in a healthy way to sacrifice. And then you've got to set the boundaries. I've watched families try to save their addict sons from their addiction, and I have watched them quit work, leverage their house, lose their job, lose the rest of their family, only to have the heartbreak at the end that all of that actually led to more guilt, more trauma, more chaos, and the addict never got healthy. Everybody knows one of my favorite stories, the prodigal son. I have watched children turn away from, reject their healthy family for many, many, many years, and then come back to a happy and ever after that nobody expected. I've never heard a family, parent say, I'm really glad that I sacrificed everything to try to save this child who rejected the help. Now, if I knew for a fact that my child would be successful and happy if I gave everything up, my business, my clothes, my house. I would give up my business, my clothes, my house. And that's because I've only got one child, right? So I don't have other siblings to deal with. I would give it up in a heartbeat. I'm the guy. I would definitely take a bullet for my daughter. I would jump in front of a speeding car. But here's the thing. If I give up my life, my identity for my child, I know for a fact my child's not going to be happy, not going to have the skills to deal with life. I know you feel hopeless. I know that you feel like there's nothing to do. The next step is writing down for yourself, here's how I'm going to love on and walk alongside my child, and here's what I'm going to do so that I'm okay. And then sticking to that plan consistently. A lot of parents do a lot of damage because they make a plan and then they don't stick to it, because they don't see the instant results, or they assess it based on, did I fix my child or not? Set a healthy plan in motion, including boundaries, including self-care, including healthy relationship practices, and stick to it because you know it's right, because you know it's healthy. And when your child won't talk to you, there is an assessment to go through. Was I abusive? Did I cause trauma that was unreasonable and unforgivable? Do I have amends to make because of that? Some children aren't talking to you because they are so unhealthy. I want us all as parents to take accountability, but sometimes it's not you. It's not because of you. It's because your child has chosen such an unhealthy path. I've known parents who are baffled, came to group, came to session with me. I don't know why my child won't talk to me. And then years go by, finally the child comes back, and I'll get like a message that says, hey, by the way, all this time, I didn't know they were going through this thing and making these certain choices, and they were so ashamed. They separated from me and our family because they were either stuck in addiction, or they were in some crazy relationship that was really unhealthy, or they were abusive to somebody and knew they needed to stay away, right? I can remember one family where the son had stayed away from the entire family because he had decided he was a terrible person and he was abusive and he wasn't changing. And so he went out into the world and was in relationship with other people and abusive and terrible, but he didn't want to keep hurting his family. Finally got the help that he needed and came back to his family. I'm not saying that's what's happening, but there's any number of reasons that might not be just about you. And that is grieving. We sometimes lose our children in the most unfortunate ways, and it's not our fault, and we didn't have control over it. I wish I had magic words for resolving all of those issues and keeping families together at all times. I just don't have that magic. But thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your honesty and your willingness to share.
The Hope for Parents with Struggling Teens podcast is an Inspired Resolutions production. Hosted by Brandon Jaffe. Edited and mixed by Natalie Atkinson. Music by Natalie and Sean Atkinson. Inspired Resolutions Counseling is based in Yorba Linda, California. Whether you're interested in joining our group, seeking therapy services, or exploring more of our resources, you can find us on our website, Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube at Inspired Resolutions Counseling.